Hey guys. In 2016, Apple will most certainly treat us to the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, the next chapter in its smartphone history. Rumors about these devices were already floating around even before the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus were released, which is usually the case with anything related to Apple. That's rather normal considering that iPhones are usually among the most popular devices on the market and are usually highly anticipated by users and everyone, actually. The device will likely feature fresh new design and certainly some additional horsepower under the hood, and hopefully, something fresh to woo us with. Without further ado, let's summarize all we know so far about next year's iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus champs. Have in mind that this post will be regularly updated with the latest leaks and rumors as they become available. Fresh new design. As you are probably aware, Apple has been keeping a strict 2-year window between the redesigns of its smartphones for a long time now. Thus, we have the iPhone 6s vastly similar to the iPhone 6, the iPhone 5s mostly alike with the iPhone 5, the iPhone 4s indistinguishable from the iPhone 4, and so on. This is why we are expecting Jony Ive & Co to spice things up in the design department a bit, while keeping the same unmistakable iPhone design language on board. While we don't know to what extent the iPhone 7 will shake things up in the design department, we are somewhat certain that the next iteration of the venerable iOS flagship won't stray away that much from the exterior looks of the 6 and 6s, 6 Plus and 6s Plus. Still, this is a wild guess at best, and we will have to wait for the first leaks and renders of the iPhone 7 to pop up before we can say whether it will succeed the iPhone 6 inches the design department or be something entirely different. Yes, we wouldn't mind it if Apple decided to come back to the 90-degree edges of the iPhone 5 and 5s era. In this day and age where most manufacturers are largely employing rounded frames, it would be a breath of fresh air. Still, we will have to wait a bit before we get our first glimpse of iPhone 7 and 7 Plus looks. As far as build materials are concerned, Apple is most likely sticking with aluminum, and judging by the iPhone 6s, that'd be Series 7000 aluminum. Have in mind that the 9 members of the Series 7000 aluminum family are touted as the strongest aluminum alloys around, which means that Apple is certainly sticking with it for now. We heard that the next crop of iPhones might come sans a home button and have the Touch ID functionality embedded inside the display, which falls in line with a certain patent application that we got hold of earlier in 2015. Well, we seem to have the technology, so a display with an embedded fingerprint scanning functionality will most certainly pop up in the coming years. Sadly, we can't say just yet whether the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus will be the first ones to do so. What's more, it is also suggested that Cupertino might finally jump on the waterproofness train and make the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus watertight. This was somewhat suggested by the abundance of silicone seals and gaskets that make the current iPhone Pro able to withstand a lengthy dunk in the water to some extent. Apart from physical evidence found in the 6s and 6s Plus, we also have a patent that allegedly reveals Apple is entertaining the idea of making its devices immune to the water element. We also heard that the iPhone 7 might not feature a 3.5mm earphone jack and instead rely on a Lightning one in order to slim down some weight. Reportedly, Apple wants to make the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus the thinnest iPhones ever. Cupertino is reportedly aiming poised to make its next devices roughly 6mm thick. As a reminder, the iPhone 6 was 6.9mm thin, while the 6s flaunts exactly 0.2mm on top. Apart from thinner footprint, the next crop of iPhones might feature thinner bezels due to the alleged nixing of in-cell touch panels. An improved version of the well-known glass-on-glass technology might be used instead. Hardware. It's a no-brainer that Apple is going to grace its next handset with an even speedier chipset, which will most likely be called the Apple A10 System on Chip, called SoC. Considering that the Apple A9 chip that is currently gracing the iPhone 6s and the 6s Plus is a 64-bit performance champ, manufactured with Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, called TSMC, is 16nm or Samsung's 14nm manufacturing process. Well, it's too early to have any specific pieces of info for the chipset, but certain sources already claim Apple will exclusively choose Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing as the sole supplier for the A10 SoC. It's also rumored that it will be a 16nm FinFET A1, similar to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing's A9 produce. Judging by Apple A9's performance, which is one of the very best SoCs on the scene right now, we have extremely high hopes for the A10, which will most certainly end in the top tier end of the performance spectrum. In the memory department, Cupertino's amped up the game of the 6S and the 6S Plus by throwing in some much needed operational memory inside. In 2015, we finally got an iPhone with 2 GB of RAM. Judging by the fact that Apple has been employing 1 GB of RAM ever since 2012's iPhone 5, and followed this trend for 3 years, we are quite doubtful that the iPhone 7 will come with 3 GB of RAM on board. This is what the Min Micro, an industry insider with a rather good track record, has been trying to instill in us, at least as far as the iPhone 7 Plus is concerned. Call us doubting Thomases, but we are not entirely convinced that such an upgrade will take place next year. Display. A flurry of rumors claims that Apple is indeed entertaining the idea of putting an active matrix organic light emitting diode display on its future iPhones, probably after 2018. Other rumors suggest the shift from LCD to active matrix organic light emitting diode might take place in 2019 at the earliest. Well, we believe that this might eventually happen, but the iPhone 7 is unlikely to come with such a display. On the contrary, Apple will likely continue to rely on IPS LCD screen panels for the time being. As far as resolution is concerned, we are yet to be tipped with info about the upcoming iPhone crop. There are 2 options though. Apple will either increase the resolution or not. Still, we're a bit more inclined to believe that the iPhone 7 will flaunt a 4.7-inch display with the resolution of 750 by 1334 pixels, and command a pixel density of 326p, while the larger iPhone 7 Plus will most likely arrive with a 5.5-inch, 1080-pixel screen, which brings forth a pixel density of 401p, the sharpest in Cupertino's arsenal. Indeed, these are the very same measurements that can be found in the specs sheets of the iPhone 6, 6s, 6 Plus, and 6s Plus. We are not ruling out the idea that Apple might shake things up in this regard, but due to the lack of any hearsay so far, we will take the conservative approach. There's an interesting rumor flying around, though. It seems that Apple was poised to develop its own set of display drivers for the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus order to boost image sharpness and battery life, but fell behind schedule and had to place orders for Synaptics display controllers. In case you don't know, Synaptics is Apple's supplier of touch and display drivers. 3D Touch. 3D Touch is here to stay, and will most likely score new functionalities along the way. As we mentioned earlier, Apple is reportedly contemplating the idea of bringing a multi-3D touch on board the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. This feature will allow users to apply pressure on several points on the display. Hopefully, this would be used for a wider range of UI interactions, and not just for your usual shoot 'em up game. We know nothing else about 3D Touch on the next crop of iPhones, but we suppose that we won't hear anything until the device is official, as we expect the majority of changes to be in the interface and the software functionality of the pressure sensing feature. Camera. So far, we've heard nothing new about the iPhone 7 camera, but similarly to the RAM, it got substantially updated with the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus earlier this year. The latter scored nifty 12-megapixel rear cameras with smaller pixel size, 122, as well as 5-megapixel front-facing selfie-centric ones, which is quite the improvement over the 1.2-megapixel that graced previous generations of the device. This makes us think that Apple most likely won't bother to increase its megapixel count in 2016. However, we are certain that Cupertino will throw some nice improvements or even new functionalities in its next iPhones, in order to step up their photography game. We can only imagine what these might be, and needless to say, impatient to check them out. We are certain that the rumor mill will give us one of the possible new camera-specific features of the iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus is a bit far-fetched, but not entirely implausible. According to a report we got hold of a week or so ago, we heard that Apple might employ a dual camera setup on its next devices. There is not much room for speculation here, folks. One of the cameras will likely be used for depth perception, whereas the other one will act as a regular one. The resulting photos might have adjustable focus. Have in mind that this rumor is in the Wild West of New England right now, so until we get hold of some alleged chassis leaks, we can't say whether this will turn out to be true or merely vaporware. Judging by the performance of iPhone 6's camera, we have rather high hopes for the iPhone 7's one. Apple is traditionally strong in the field of mobile photography, so we expect 2016's iPhones to be solid camera phones. Release date. As we already told you, despite what the rumor mill is trying to persuade us, we expect the new batch of iPhones to arrive in September 2016, probably in the first 2 weeks of the month. That's the usual time window in which Apple hosts an iPhone-centric event and shows us its new gadgets. This has been Cupertino practice for the last couple of years, so we see zero reasons for Apple to break this tradition in 2016. Thank you for watching. Don't forget like,